I'm so glad you're here with us today. We're diving deep into A Course in Miracles, and if you're just joining our community, you might be wondering what this course is all about. I'd love to invite you to check out the very first video on this channel, where I break down exactly what A Course in Miracles is, how it came to exist, and why it's been transforming lives for over 5 decades. It'll give you the perfect foundation for everything we explore together here. Now let me ask you something that might hit close to home. How much of your day do you spend thinking about who you are? Not who you truly are at your core, but who you think you should be. The successful version of yourself, the spiritual version, the healed version, the version that finally has it all together. We spend so much energy crafting and protecting these images of ourselves, don't we? We curate them, defend them, polish them until they shine. And somewhere deep down, we believe that if we can just get this self-image right, if we can just become that person we're imagining, then we'll finally be worthy. Then we'll finally be at peace. But here's what the Course wants you to understand today, and it might shake something loose inside you. What if everything you've been doing to build yourself up has actually been keeping you small? What if the very act of creating a self-image, no matter how beautiful or spiritual that image might be, is the exact thing that's blocking you from experiencing your true power? Not the power to impress others or achieve goals, but the power to create as God creates, to extend love without limits, to know yourself as you truly are. This is what Chapter 3, Section 7 of A Course in Miracles addresses with stunning clarity. It draws a line in the sand between two completely different activities that we often confuse with each other. On one side, there's creation, the natural extension of your true self, the overflow of love that requires no effort and no defense. On the other side, there's the self-image, the ego's masterpiece, a carefully constructed identity that demands constant maintenance, validation, and protection. And here's where it gets really interesting. You can't do both. You cannot simultaneously create from your divine nature and construct a separate self-image. They're opposite directions. One moves outward in freedom and extension. The other moves inward in contraction and fear. One requires you to remember who you are. The other requires you to forget. Think about how exhausting it is to maintain your self-image. Every interaction becomes a test. Every situation becomes an opportunity to prove or improve who you think you are. You're constantly measuring yourself, adjusting your presentation, wondering how you're being perceived. It's like wearing a mask that's so heavy you've forgotten what your real face feels like underneath. But what if you could drop it? What if you could stop trying to become someone and simply be? What if the you that you're trying so hard to create is actually a pale shadow of the you that already exists, whole and complete in the mind of God? Today we're going to explore this profound distinction. We're going to look at how the self-image was formed, why it feels so important to defend it, and what happens when you finally let it go. We're going to discover what true creation actually means and how different it is from everything the ego has taught you about building yourself up. This isn't just philosophy. This is about your freedom. This is about remembering your innocence. So let's begin. The nature of true creation. Let's start with something that might completely shift how you see yourself. When A Course in Miracles talks about creation, it's not talking about making things. It's not about building a business, painting a masterpiece, or even manifesting your desires. Those might be wonderful activities, but they're not what the Course means by creation. Real creation, divine creation, is something entirely different. And understanding this difference is going to change everything. Creation, in its truest sense, is extension. It's the natural overflow of what you are. Think about the sun for a moment. The sun doesn't try to shine. It doesn't wake up in the morning and decide whether or not it's going to give light today. Shining is simply what the sun does because of what it is. The light extends from the sun effortlessly, endlessly, without the sun losing anything in the process. In fact, the sun's nature is fulfilled in that extension. That's creation. Now, here's what the Course wants you to grasp. You are created in the image of God, which means you share God's nature. And God's nature is to create, to extend, to give of himself completely. This isn't a metaphor or a nice spiritual idea. This is what you actually are. You are creative power itself. Not creative in the sense that you make things out of nothing, but creative in the sense that love, peace, and joy naturally extend through you when you're not blocking them with fear and false beliefs. When you create in this divine sense, you're not adding anything to yourself. You're not trying to become more than you are. You're simply allowing what you truly are to extend into expression. There's no effort in it, no strain, no need for validation or approval. It's as natural as breathing. A loving thought extends and blesses. A moment of genuine peace ripples out and touches everything around you. That's creation. That's what you were made to do. And here's the beautiful part. When you create, you lose nothing. In fact, you gain everything because you recognize yourself in what you've created. God creates you, and in that creation, he knows himself more fully. You extend love, and in that extension, you know yourself more fully. Creation is the proof of your reality. It's the evidence that you're not a separate, isolated individual trying to survive in a hostile world. You're an infinite being whose very nature is to overflow with love. But here's where we get confused. We've been taught that creation means making something separate from ourselves. We think we create when we build, construct, or form something external. We think we're being creative when we're producing results, achieving goals, or leaving our mark on the world. And while there's nothing wrong with those activities, they're not creation in the way the Course uses the word. They're making, and making comes from a completely different place. Creation comes from abundance. Making comes from lack. Creation is effortless extension. Making requires effort and manipulation. Creation adds to reality. Making rearranges illusions. Do you see the difference? When you understand what true creation is, you stop exhausting yourself trying to prove your worth through accomplishments. You start recognizing that your value is already established, and your only function is to let it shine. The self-image and the ego so. If creation is your natural state, if extending love is what you're designed to do, then what happened? Why don't you experience yourself this way? Why does life feel like such a struggle, like you're constantly trying to become someone instead of simply being? This is where the self-image comes in, and understanding how it was formed is absolutely crucial to your freedom. The self-image is the ego's answer to a question that should never have been asked. What if I'm not who God created me to be? What if I could be separate, independent, autonomous? What if I could define myself? The moment that thought seemed possible, the entire structure of the self-image began to form. Because if you're going to be separate from your source, if you're going to exist independently, then you need an identity. You need to know who you are without God telling you who you are. And so the ego went to work. It looked at your body and said, "This is you." It looked at your past experiences and said, "These define you." It looked at your accomplishments and failures, your relationships and rejections, your strengths and weaknesses, and it wove them all together into a story. This is who you are. This is yourself, and you believed it. We all believed it. Because when you think you're separate from God, you desperately need something to hold on to. Some sense of identity that makes you feel real. But here's what you need to understand. The self-image isn't you. It's a construction. It's a story the ego tells to keep you believing in separation. And the ego knows that if you ever question this story, if you ever look beyond the self-image to discover your true self, the ego's entire game is over. So it does something incredibly clever. It makes you think that defending your self-image is the same thing as defending your life. Think about how much energy you put into this every single day. Someone criticizes you, and you immediately defend yourself. Why? Because you believe that criticism threatens who you are. Someone doesn't recognize your value, and you feel diminished. Why? Because you've confused your self-image with your reality. Someone succeeds where you failed, and you feel inadequate. Why? because your self-image is based on comparison, on being better than or worse than, on standing out or fitting in. The ego has convinced you that you are this fragile collection of attributes, memories, and roles. And if those things are threatened, you're threatened. If those things are damaged, you're damaged. So you spend your entire life protecting an illusion, reinforcing a story that was never true to begin with. You curate your social media to present the right image. You rehearse conversations to make sure you come across the right way. You hide your weaknesses and amplify your strengths. You're constantly editing, adjusting, perfecting this character you think you are. And the exhausting part? You can never get it right. Because the self-image is never stable. It's always under threat. It's always needing validation. It's always comparing itself to others and coming up short or puffing itself up. One day you feel confident and worthy. The next day something happens that shatters that feeling. And you're back to defending and rebuilding. It's a never-ending cycle. The ego loves this cycle because it keeps you distracted. As long as you're focused on maintaining your self-image, you're not looking for your true self. As long as you believe you are this small, separate person trying to survive and succeed, you're not remembering that you're a divine creation, whole and complete and eternally safe in God. Here's the truth the ego doesn't want you to know. Your self-image, no matter how spiritual or successful or healed you make it, is still a prison. It's still separation. It's still the belief that you're something other than what God created, and you cannot be free until you're willing to let it go. The conflict between creation and self-image. Now we come to the heart of the matter, and this is where everything starts to make sense. You cannot create and maintain a self-image at the same time. You simply cannot. They're mutually exclusive. They pull in opposite directions, and the tension you feel in your life, that constant sense of struggle and incompleteness, comes directly from trying to do both. Let me show you how this plays out. When you're operating from your true self, from that place of divine creation, you extend love naturally. There's no thought of how this makes you look. There's no calculation about what you'll get in return. There's no concern about whether this fits your image or enhances your reputation. You simply give because giving is your nature. It flows through you like light through a clear window. Effortless, pure, complete. But the moment you start thinking about your self-image, everything changes. Now you're not just extending love, you're wondering how that extension reflects on you. You're not just being kind, you're hoping people notice how kind you are. You're not just creating, you're making sure your creation proves something about you. Do you see what happened? The natural flow stopped. The extension became contaminated with ego. What was meant to be creation became performance. This is the conflict. Creation requires you to forget yourself, to move beyond the boundaries of the small self and let something greater move through you. The self-image requires you to remember yourself constantly, to monitor every action for how it affects your standing, your worth, your identity. Creation is freedom. Self-image is bondage. And you're trying to live in both simultaneously, which is why you feel so torn, so exhausted, so frustrated. Think about the energy you waste defending your self-image. Someone misunderstands you, and you spend hours mentally rehearsing how you'll set the record straight. Someone achieves something you wanted, and you feel that twist of envy, that sense that their success somehow diminishes you. Someone points out a flaw, and your entire day is ruined because you've taken it as an attack on who you are. All of this energy, all of this emotional turmoil is coming from one source: your investment in a false identity. And here's what makes this so insidious. The better your self-image, the harder it is to let go of. If you've worked hard to become spiritual, successful, healed, or enlightened, you've got even more invested in that image. You've got a shinier prison, but it's still a prison. The spiritual ego is just as binding as any other ego. Maybe even more so because it's so subtle, so seemingly righteous. You think you're growing when you're really just building a more sophisticated self-concept. The Course is asking you to do something radical. Stop. Stop trying to improve your self-image. Stop trying to become someone worthy. Stop defending, explaining, and perfecting this character you think you are. Because every moment you spend maintaining that image is a moment you're not creating. Every ounce of energy you put into the false self is energy unavailable for the true self. Now, I know what you might be thinking. If I let go of my self-image, won't I just fall apart? Won't I lose myself completely? And this is the fear the ego uses to keep you trapped. But here's the truth. You won't lose yourself. You'll find yourself. Your true self has been there all along, underneath all the layers of identity you've constructed. Your true self doesn't need to be defended because it cannot be attacked. It doesn't need to be improved because it's already perfect. It doesn't need validation because it knows itself in God. When you release the self-image, something amazing happens. You discover that creation was always available to you. Love was always ready to extend through you. Peace was always present. You were just too busy maintaining your image to notice. The pathway from self-concept to true self isn't about becoming something new. It's about removing what was never real in the first place. It's about dissolving the barriers you've built and allowing your natural state to emerge. This is your invitation. Not to build a better you, but to remember the you that God created. Not to perfect your image, but to let it go entirely and discover what's been waiting underneath all along. So here we are at the end of our exploration. But really, this is just the beginning. Because now you have a choice in front of you that you might not have seen so clearly before. Every single day, in every single moment, you're choosing between two paths. You're either maintaining your self-image or you're allowing true creation to flow through you. You're either defending who you think you are or you're resting in who you truly are. And now that you see the difference, you can't unsee it. The beautiful thing about A Course in Miracles is that it doesn't ask you to make this shift all at once. It's not demanding that you dissolve your entire self-concept by tomorrow morning. It's simply inviting you to notice. Notice when you're defending. Notice when you're performing. Notice when you're exhausting yourself trying to prove your worth. And in that noticing, in that gentle awareness, the self-image begins to loosen its grip. Not because you're fighting it, but because you're seeing through it. Your innocence, the Course tells us, is found in creation, not in concepts. Not in how well you've constructed your spiritual identity. Not in how healed or awakened you appear, but in those moments when love simply extends through you without any thought of self at all. Those moments when you help someone without calculating what it means about you. Those moments when peace fills you and you're not trying to capture it or claim it or make it part of your story. Those moments when you just are without needing to be anyone in particular. That's where your innocence lives. That's where your freedom waits. I want to thank you so much for being here today, for opening your mind to these ideas, for being willing to question what you've always believed about yourself. That willingness is everything. That's the tiny crack that lets the light in. If this message resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you listened, I'd love for you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're building a community here of people who are serious about waking up, who are willing to look at the ego's tricks and choose something different. And please, share this video with someone who might need to hear it. You know who they are. That friend who's constantly struggling with their self-worth. That family member who's exhausting themselves trying to be perfect. That person in your life who seems to be searching for something they can't quite name. This message might be exactly what they need right now. Remember, we're here every single day, exploring A Course in Miracles together, going deeper into these teachings that have the power to completely transform how you experience life. You're not on this journey alone. We're walking this path together, supporting each other, reminding each other of the truth when the ego gets loud. So take this with you today. You are not your self-image. You never were. You are so much more than any story you could tell about yourself. You are creation itself, an extension of divine love, whole and complete and absolutely free. Let that truth settle into your heart. Let it change how you move through your day. And I'll see you tomorrow as we continue this beautiful journey home. Thank you for being here. I love you, and I'll talk to you very soon.